LSU will probably jump out to an early lead. Oklahoma's offense is potent enough that it'll probably score some points, but I think it'll be pretty much an LSU game all the way.
Want to give me a prediction?
Score-wise, LSU 44, Oklahoma 30.
Okay. Well, I'm here to make everything easy for you guys, right? When it comes to predictions, right? When have you ever known me to be that easy to begin with, right?
Yeah, the other guys that are suspended, defensive lineman Ronnie Perkins, running back Ramondre Stevenson, and wide receiver Trahan Bridges. Nothing has ever come out about why they were suspended. Usually if it's something legal, it would have shown up on somebody's police blotter by now. So I don't have any inside information, and nobody does. But usually the case is performance-enhancing drugs when there's a suspension announced and no reason given.
Okay, fair enough. Okay. The next one, Clemson, Ohio State.
Yeah, in fact, Clemson, this happened to Clemson last year where they had 3 players suspended, including defensive tackle Dexter Lawrence, who's now with the New York Giants. He's first-round draft picks. One of the players was tight end Brendan Galloway, and he missed the whole season. His suspension started with the playoffs, the entire regular season, and now I see where he's eligible to play against Ohio State in the second playoff games, the second semifinal. It just seems kind of odd to be suspended for the regular season and eligible for the postseason. But I guess what are you going to do? But this should be a real good game. Ohio State and Clemson. Those 3 teams, LSU, Clemson, and Ohio State, any one of those 3 can win the national title. It's going to come down to maybe some turnovers, a bad call, a funny bounce of the ball for one of those 3 teams to win the whole thing. Of course, LSU, I expect them to advance to the finals with no problem, but they'll have a tough matchup between the Clemson and Ohio State winner. Clemson, Ohio State is the second game on Saturday. They're out in Arizona in the Fiesta Bowl.
So, give me a prediction.
Boy, that's a tough one. I've been going back and forth on that one all along. I think Clemson has a bit of a chip on its shoulder, and from the all season long being discounted as an ACC team, and they may be in the ACC team. The ACC may not be as strong as other conferences overall, although I don't quite buy that. I don't think there's that much of a difference between the ACC and the SEC and the Big Ten when you talk about the schools top to bottom. SEC, of course, gets a lot of publicity out of Alabama and LSU and Georgia. But after that, those other teams aren't that good. Ole Miss, Arkansas, Mississippi State, they're just plain old teams. So I don't quite buy this ACC. Clemson isn't as good as people think because of the ACC. But I think they're going to use that motivation to beat Ohio State. I expect a barn burner. It's going to go down right to maybe it'll go down to who has the ball last. I don't know. It doesn't help Ohio State that Justin Fields, their quarterback, bagged up his knee a little bit in the Michigan game. He says he's okay, but what else is he going to say? We'll have to see when he gets out there.
Score.
Let's see. On that one, you'd like to think both the defenses are tough and strong, but just the nature of the game is not lots of scoring these days. I'll say Clemson 30-27.
Give you credit. You're sticking to that barn burner, 30-27. Folks, you heard it here. Clemson over Ohio State, LSU 44-30. Should I ask you to go out on a limb for the other one? No, we'll just save it for another program. We got to let you process this one first. Okay.
Yeah, we'll see how the games goes. You don't know how teams don't always play. Aren't always as hot in the postseason as they were in the regular season. And then, of course, there's always the injury factor.
All right, well, we're going to go on to the next thing, and that's the Charlotte TD Club. Why don't you explain what you want to talk about there, Tom?
Yeah, if people were to go to my website, ShanahanReport.com, and that's Shanahan, just like the 49ers coach Kyle Shanahan. I wrote a story about the Charlotte Touchdown Club. Now, most people know they give out the Bronco Nagurski Award, and that went to Chase Young, Ohio State's defensive end, that is probably the top defensive player in the nation, and the only one that might be picked number one over a quarterback if he were to come out early. So they're known for that award. That's a good award, of course. Anything named after Bronco Nagurski is a good award. But about 5-6 years ago, they started another award called the Defender of the Nation Award, and that's pretty much limited to I shouldn't say it's not. It's Air Force, Army, and Navy, the three service academies, but it includes VMI and some of the other schools that are military oriented, and that includes actually Virginia Tech and Texas A&M, because they have a strong military representative on their campus, if not so much the football program. So, in my point on the Defender of the Nation Award went to Air Force's linebacker Kyle Johnson. He had a great season. He was second on the team in tackles, had a pick six for a touchdown, and he's a linebacker. Air Force was 10-2. They got back to the bowls this year after missing 2 straight years with 5-7 records. And my point on this being a special award is, nowadays college sports is funneled down to just the 5, 6, 7 teams that have a chance to make the college football playoff. They're the ones where all the recruits follow each other to. They're the ones that get all the attention on ESPN and whatever other talking heads there are, and then on the internet. Instead of a broader media, more news access with cable TV, instead of just 3 over-the-air networks like there were in the old days, you'd think that would broaden the scope to more candidates, but actually the publicity gets focused like a microscope on just a handful of players in schools, and fewer players have a shot at such awards. So and what I'm trying to say is, an academy athlete who's not going to be an elite athlete, he's not going to be a top recruit in the country. They don't go to the academies. They're virtually shut out of winning any of these awards. So I think it's a good idea to have a special award for them that singles them out for their selfless commitment to the country. They're not only a very good football player. Some of them have an NFL future, not very many of them, but some. It's special to have an award that focuses on their all-around college life, their football player, their commitment to serve in the military afterward, and all the other things they do in their community and that type of thing. And the Air Force winner was Kyle Johnson. That story's up on my website. The headline is Charlotte Touchdown Club Award Gets It Right. Okay. Now, this is called the Defender of the Nation Award. So it's obviously for a defensive player. Later in the story, I talked about how in 2015, Keenan Reynolds, Navy's quarterback, he led them to an 11-2 record and somehow managed to finish 5th in the Heisman Trophy voting, 3rd team All-American, which is, highly unusual for an academy athlete to get that kind of attention. Part of it was he was a 4th-year starting senior, and Navy had been to bowl games. They'd been a winning program all 4 years. So his name was out there on the radar a little bit more than a kid would be now. And my example on that is Malcolm Perry is Navy's quarterback this year. He led them to an 11-2 record, ran for 1,804 yards, set a lot of records. Navy won the Commander-in-Chief's trophy, meaning they swept Army and Air Force. But he was nowhere in the picture for the Heisman voting the way Keenan Reynolds was. So it's so circumstantial for an academy athlete to get attention. I was speculating at the end of my story here that the Defender of the Nation Award is a great one, but how about an award named after Roger Staubach for a Heisman of the academies? Roger Staubach, of course, was the last academy athlete to win the Heisman in 1963 at Navy.
Right.
And back in those days, academy athletes, a lot of them were, this was before the Vietnam quagmire hurt academy football and then the escalation of pro football salaries in the 60s. back in Roger Staubach's day, some of the best athletes in the country would still consider going to Army, Navy, or Air Force.
All right, well, let me comment on a couple things. Lewis has a quick question for you, but I'm going to get this out first. No doubt about it. Roger Staubach should have an award. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Why it hasn't happened, to me, goes beyond my wildest imagination. Here's a guy that obviously had a storied career with the Dallas Cowboys, and very few people realize what he's done at the Naval Academy. I don't get into politics on the show, nor will I ever. But I will say one thing about our President of the United States, Donald Trump. After the Army-Navy game, we talked about this before. Lewis is sitting in on this right now for the first time. That's one thing that Donald Trump was smart about, is let these guys play immediately. Don't make them wait a few years. Lewis, go ahead. What do you want to ask him?
This is a football question, Tom. Staubach, if a lot of people who are old enough to remember, was really one of the first guys at the college level who emphasized the running game. And obviously, we saw that with Keenan Reynolds, and now with the quarterback that you just mentioned that's there. What is it about that program that sees these quarterbacks run such a run-heavy offense? Because I believe Keenan Reynolds' is 4 years at Navy. I think there was only like 160 pass attempts in his 4 years there, but he had something like 89 rushing touchdowns. I mean, why is their offense so permeated on having a quarterback who can run as much as they do?
Well, what happened was, once the Vietnam quagmire turned off a lot of people on the military, they didn't want to serve. And then, of course, if you were a top college recruit in the nation, you wanted to go to a school where you could graduate from and then go into the NFL draft because there was money to be made. So all three of the academies, Air Force, Army, and Navy, they all tailed off in the 60s. They went downhill rapidly because of the lack of talent. In a way that the turnaround began to what it is now, where both Air Force is ranked number 24, and Navy, I think, is number 19, maybe number 21. But having two academy teams ranked, what happened was in the early 80s, Air Force, with Fisher DeBerry as the coach, switched to the triple option offense. And that gave smaller players, smaller linemen, quarterbacks that could run but maybe not throw that well, a chance to compete against Division I schools. And Air Force had all kinds of success throughout the 80s. Navy, Army would switch back and forth between the triple option and another offense because, the fans in general want to see the ball thrown. But starting with Paul Johnson around 2000, Paul Johnson brought the triple option to Navy, and they started to dominate the academies and win the Commander-in-Chief's trophy and have ranked teams. Paul Johnson, of course, went on to Georgia Tech, but their offensive coordinator, Ken Niumatalolo, was promoted to head coach, and he's been there, I think, maybe 10 years now. And he continued that same type of success with the same triple option offense and quarterbacks. Army was a little slower to find the formula, but they had 3 straight wins over Navy until this year, and also 3 straight bowl victories until they had a lot of injuries this year. They finished at 5-8. So basically, the triple option gives a smaller team with kids that they're smaller, lightly recruited coming out of college. But if they're coming to the academy, they're high achievers. They're going to improve as time goes on. And playing in a team offense like that, the triple option gives them a chance to compete.
Okay, a couple other points I want to get to, Tom. First of all, the only college basketball nugget we're going to throw out there is that Kansas lost. Now we're dealing with so what's your take on the Jayhawks lost?
Well, it's like we've been talking all year. It's a revolving door for number one. Gonzaga is now the new number one team, and that makes 6 teams before January 1st have been ranked number one. And when Kansas, I think when they were the number one, the 5th team was a record. Might even have been the team before them. The 4th team was a record. I'm not sure. It's all happened so fast. But there's just no dominant team out there like there have been in the past, where a lot of one-and-dones collected on one team, Duke or Kentucky. Kansas has a lot of good players, but they don't have 5 great players like they have had in the past. So we're going to see a lot more flip-flopping of the rankings. Gonzaga might be the team that stays up there for a while since The West Coast Conference isn't very strong, and they tend to